Welcome to the Cables to Clouds podcast. Cloud adoption is on the rise, and many network infrastructure professionals are being asked to adopt a hybrid approach. As individuals who have already started this journey, we would like to empower those professionals with the tools and the knowledge to bridge the gap. Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Cables to Clouds podcast, which, if it isn't already, I hope hopefully soon will be your favorite place to dive into the world of hybrid cloud networking. My name is Chris Miles. I just want to give a quick reminder out there to the listeners that, if there's anything you ever want to reach out to us about, whether it be, a question about something we said, maybe a correction to make, hell, literally anything. If you want Tim to come over and help you build an IKEA desk or something, reach out to us, hit us up. You can email us at cables2clouds@gmail.com. So yeah, literally any questions, any communication you want to send, hit us up. We would love to hear from you guys. So yeah, let's get going. So joining me today, as always, are my, beloved co-hosts, my cloud brothers from another mother, Tim McConaughey and Alex Perkins. How you doing, guys? How you doing, Tim? What's up? What's new?
Yeah, so I would like to tell everybody that I accomplished many, many things, but I'll be honest with you. My wife took my kids to Greensboro this weekend for a Frozen musical or something, like Frozen, like the movie, the Disney movie. I didn't realize that years later they're still doing those, but apparently they are. And they were gone pretty much all of Saturday. So I sat on my couch and I played Diablo 4 from like when I woke up until like midnight, I'll be honest. So I didn't get...
How was it?
Oh, it's crazy. It's good. I got the early access or whatever. So now it's actually kind of laggy, and I'm hoping they're going to fix it and whatnot. But now they let everybody, all the plebes in. But but no, it was amazing. Diablo, man, I can remember when I was in high school playing the original Diablo on like Windows 95 or something. Right. And it was such a great game. And they definitely recaptured the lightning in a bottle. I was playing with some friends of mine. I got on the PS5, so I'm loving it, dude. It's actually dangerous. I need to do one of those things where you lock the console or something, so I don't find myself over there. I'm getting my work done. Anyway, it's been good times.
Nice. Yeah, I was on my PS5 the other day, and I was scrolling through the store, and I saw it on there, and I almost pulled the trigger. So maybe I'll join you. Maybe we'll see. Alex, what's new in your world? I assume you're also playing Diablo 4.
Yeah. No. It's funny, actually. I usually don't play many video games, but my son, Tears of the Kingdom came out pretty recently.
Yeah.
We actually haven't been playing that. He's never played Breath of the Wild, so he actually bought Breath of the Wild first to play through it, and I started playing it one day just on my own, and I could not put it down.
Such a good game.
It's so good. I couldn't believe how good it was, man. Like, I've been missing out for a long time.
That's awesome.
But yeah, other than that, man, it's been beautiful out here. I have been trying to spend like every second I can outside. It's been just absolutely gorgeous outside lately.
Thanks for rubbing it in my face. It's winter starting here, so it's getting a little chilly and gloomy every day, yeah, but it's fine. Sydney winter is so mild, I can't even start to complain. It's really not bad at all. But yeah, so I have an update on the bird situation. So now I've had lorikeets now come to the window as well. Rainbow lorikeets. I've been feeding them at the window, and cockatoos. But Tim, don't you worry. I'm gonna get those kookaburras for you. I've seen them posted up at the crazy bird lady's balcony over the way. And I'm gonna steal them. She's even out there. She's like feeding them and petting them, and I'm like, I'm envious of this woman. I want that so bad. So hopefully we need some pictures. Is coming soon.
You better start posting some pictures, Chris.
We need some Disney princess pictures of Chris here covered in birds.
That would be my dream. The house would be covered in bird shit, but it would still be my dream. All right, so I'll update you guys on that next time as well. I'm trying to think what else is going on with me. Oh, Tim and I have a very exciting project that we are working on. We can't really say much about it just yet, but hopefully there will be something exciting to reveal to you guys very soon. So be on the lookout for that. All right, so let's get into today's topic. Alex and Tim and I were talking, and we wanted to start this series that we're calling Cloud DeMISTified. DeMISTified, the jokes, Misty Cloud. The joke's always good if you got to explain it, right? So this is the first installment of the Cloud DeMISTified series. So what we want to do with this is we take a cloud networking concept or a product, and we really want to kind of unravel it, demystify it, right? So we're going to dive into the history, what it does, what challenges it addresses. The thought process was kind of a how it's made episode, and sometimes we're not going to be able to get that deep with it, being the audio format, but we're going to do our best. But with that, we've also decided that we'll have the audio component, and then we're going to basically release a video component as well to kind of coincide with that, to kind of show you some visual demos. Some really cool stuff. So look in the show notes for this, and we'll hopefully have some details about the video component that you can view with every concept that we released in the DeMISTified series. So so let's get going. So this is the first installment. So we have a great topic today. We're going to be talking about AWS CloudWAN, which is a product we're closing in on about a year old since it's been GA. So we thought, a very special topic warrants a very special guest. So we've brought in our friend Ruskin Dantra, who is currently with AWS, and I will say our first ever Kiwi guest to have on the show. And I'm very, very glad to have someone and on the same time zone. Roughly in the same time zone on the pod today. So welcome, Ruskin. How are you doing?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. I am doing absolutely fantastic. So, super excited to be here. I'm just happy you didn't say someone from Australia, or what was that, East Australia, or West Australia. So I'm happy with that. So thank you for outlining that. I am actually from New Zealand, as you can see with my little blue pillar at the back. I am in Auckland, been here several years, love it. Just turning over to winter. Can't complain about winter compared to some of the winters they have over in the States. So I think Sydney and Auckland are a little bit mild, beautiful day outside, but it's still a bit chilly.
We're a little spoiled.
What's been happening with me? Yeah, we're a little bit spoiled. I think I love the beach here. So weirdly enough, you can still go to the beach in Auckland in the winter as well. I'm not quite sure if you can do that in the US. So don't know.
Only in certain places.
Yeah, right. In Florida, maybe.
With like a 7 mil wetsuit, maybe. I don't know. What did I do on the weekend? I actually played some games as well. Nothing as cool as Diablo and some of the other games you mentioned. I just got into Nintendo with my kids, so I've got a Nintendo Switch. Played a lot of Need for Speed, bringing back the old days when we used to play with the Lamborghini Countach and all those games. So just keeping it low key right now, but yeah, I spent hours on it. Way too much time than I would have liked. Weirdly enough, I got it for my kids, but I have clocked up more hours on it myself. You know how it is. It's always an experience.
I do.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a little bit about me. And yeah, I'm currently a solutions architect at AWS.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining today. We are very pleased to have you on. So yeah, let's maybe we'll start with maybe give a brief introduction to yourself. Like what's your experience been with your journey to cloud and things like that, and how'd you get where you are?
Sure, why not? I started my background in software engineering, so there's traditional C# developer. Started coding out of university, did a bit of C++. WinForms, WPF, all the good things from back in the day. Started in the cloud maybe around 2013, 2015. So it's been a while. And I had no networking background back then, so you know how it is when you're an app developer and you're looking at all these networking constructs on premises or in your cupboard back at your work. You're like, oh nah, let the ops people handle that. So that was my experience as far as networking concerned. My biggest thing I plugged in was a UPS into a server. So that was the biggest networking thing I did back in the day when we did have UPSs and we managed our own servers. Did a bit of AD connectivity in terms of networking, but yeah, that was about it. But weirdly enough, when you start dabbling in the cloud, especially with AWS and any cloud these days, this networking is such a big part of it, right? So I had to start rolling up my sleeves and learn all about VPCs, connectivity, routing, BGP, and as it starts growing, learning about Direct Connect and VPN. So I started on a journey about 2 years ago and absolutely loved it, right? So it's just something, networking is just something that makes me feel like I'm closer to the physical world rather than living up in the clouds, pun intended.
Right.
So it takes away some of that abstraction, right? It's so physical. It's about physics. It's about how fast light travels. Some of those concepts are so grounded onto the actual mechanics of devices and things like that. So it makes me feel like I'm actually doing something with real devices rather than coding at higher abstraction levels where I have no idea how it's converted to binary. So that's been my journey so far, and super excited about what we're doing in the space and a topic we're talking about today, which is CloudWAN. So yeah, a little bit about my history.
Real quick, what's the piano? Do you play the piano?
That's a keyboard, man.
Oh, okay.
It is a keyboard. Same thing. No, I don't play the keyboard. It's for my children. So they kind of tend to play. There's a saxophone and a guitar and a violin here as well. So trying to get them into more musical instruments than I ever got my hands onto. So growing up, I'm not sure about you guys, but I was told academics was the only way forward, weirdly enough, not music or anything else. So I'm trying to change that perception with my kids, especially. Studying is not the only thing. So far, so good.
That's beautiful. I love that. Awesome. Yeah, that I also found that very interesting that you moved to cloud first and then got into networking. Whereas we've started a podcast all about moving from on-prem networking to networking in the cloud. So that's that is somewhat reassuring to hear that that we preach about on the pod all the time about how it's networking is finally getting a seat at the table in the cloud world, because it just is a critical piece to every solution that you can build out, and it needs to be considered, and it feels good to hear you hammer that home. So thanks for pointing that out. So yeah, let's get into the topic at hand.
Oh,
so
100%.
Yeah. So yeah, topic at hand, CloudWAN. Let's get into it. It's, like I said, it's been out for close to a year now. I think it GA'd back in July 2022. So we're about a year in. So we'll get into how customers have taken to it and things like that. But let's maybe start with maybe a brief overview, a history of CloudWAN and how it came to be.
Yeah, sure. So the history of CloudWAN stems from customers wanting to connect a variety of their infrastructure through different geographies, through different providers, through different ways, security patterns, etc., amongst themselves, right? So customers wanted to have connectivity, branch networks, data centers. It could be whatever, like cupboards in their office locations. And they often did that through MPLS, through VPN, SD-WAN, etc. Right? So there was a plethora of different technologies which they used to connect all of this together. And with the advent of cloud in the past few years, a lot of customers have started moving to the cloud, right? So their cloud has become an extension of their data center, sometimes taking over their data center themselves. So the primary data center has become the cloud. And slowly and surely, more of their center of gravity is moving towards the cloud, right? So they are moving a lot of migrating a lot of the workloads, finding a little bit more around how do we connect to the cloud. And as they start growing, they might get a new branch location coming up, or they might have another region expansion. They are looking at expanding and growing their footprint as well. So every time they grow, there's an extra burden about how do we provision circuit? How do we sort out security? How do you provision the topology in the networks? And it's never the same, right? It's always different depending on which region, which locale you live in, right? Depends on the rules and regulations. Timeframes are different. How do we connect up this new branch which is coming up? Do we connect it into the data center? Do we go directly to the cloud? Do we use direct connect? Do we use VPN? Do we use SD-WAN? A lot of questions came about. So CloudWAN is essentially a managed service which helps customers to have this unified connectivity options in AWS, right? So we help them connecting into AWS through whatever they're pleased to do, right? So it could be SD-WAN, or it could be VPN, or Direct Connect. We let them land into AWS, and from there we provide a unified construct to expand through various regions. And one of the reasons customers asked us for this is essentially they were tracing our backbone all the way across different regions. So they wanted connectivity to AWS, so they would kind of trace it there into a particular region, US, for example, and they wanted connectivity in Singapore, so they would have connectivity coming into that explicitly, joining them together. It's always a little bit manual, a little bit disjointed. So CloudWAN allows them to have that uniformed, global network across their real estate in the cloud. And it does it giving them, the tools they already know through AWS Cloud, and also gives them a way to kind of monitor it using a single pane of glass. So that essentially is a little bit about the history to help customers have a unified approach, make it a little bit simple, give capabilities around dashboarding, and also keep security at the forefront, right? Because with all these different technologies, security becomes quite an arduous task. So how do you tackle that? So CloudWAN handles and helps customers with that.
This is interesting because when you hear the word CloudWAN, I mean, that is what you think of. You think of the idea like, okay, we're going to use cloud as like a backbone, right? It's almost like a different use case than what you think of as traditional cloud, which is, of course, a cloud is it's essentially a data center that, AWS or another provider is running, and we've got workloads there. And really, we're only interested in north-south type of connectivity where we have users trying to access workloads. But what it sounds like you're saying is that CloudWAN is actually more like, a method to connect, almost like a provider, if you will, almost like a service provider type of connection. And so would you say that CloudWAN, not that you would necessarily, but like you would connect, sites together and not even be concerned about, hey, do I need to reach all these workloads? Or, I mean, I assume the goal is really still to be connecting users to the workloads.
Yeah, 100%. So that's a good point, Tim. So that's what I was saying earlier, right? So originally the workloads were in data centers, and users would potentially get access to these workloads by, site-to-site VPNs or client VPNs directly to the data centers. But as customers are starting to move these workloads onto AWS, what does the connectivity pattern look like over here, right? As they're looking at disaster recovery or even multi-region expansion, they're moving these workloads across regions to, reduce latency for the end users. So how would they connect various regions together through a single backbone? And we already have that backbone, right? So AWS connects multiple regions together. We have multiple POPs, and why not let customers, piggyback on some of that good AWS backbone technology we have and expose that for them to do that connectivity. So as long as you can have a route into AWS, either via, I say route quite loosely here, via VPN or SD-WAN, from that point onwards, you can have east-west connectivity, I guess east-west from a cloud perspective, having multiple regions, right? So it's not out to the internet. And you can have that connectivity through different workloads. And it's all seamless, right? So you're not managing any hardware. You're not having a big contracts with the MPLS providers. You're not worried about hefty timeframes. This is in a matter of minutes expanding out globally, right? As opposed to weeks or months where you have to negotiate big contracts with providers, even if they do exist, or even managed VPN device hardware on your branches and things like that. So yeah, it really simplifies for our customers through that connectivity across the cloud.
I love what you said, Tim, because it's basically, like you said, it's like a virtual global on-demand network, right? It's almost like some kind of network CDN hybrid kind of thing, right? And it's cool though. Thing I want to call out is, you guys could have easily just CloudWAN and just done the networking piece, but when it came out, it already had things like security built into it and a dashboard and, just segmentation. And it's just awesome that those are the things that were already built into it that you can just do from day one. And that's exactly what you would expect from a network. But I think if someone just came out with that, not everyone would think of adding all those things into it right from the jump. So I just think it's really cool that those are all added in there as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Alex. Right. So but with anything with AWS, right, security is our top priority. Networking is no less. Right. So what we found with networking is that our customers often wanted routing domains. So like when you land in the cloud or even your data center, how do you establish who can talk to which networks can talk to which networks, right? And we wanted to make that a first-class citizen in CloudWAN itself, right? So essentially like intent-driven networking. So it wasn't about low-level things like routes and subnets. It was higher than that. Like it was slightly higher abstraction layer. And the reason we did that is like if you're looking at a global network and if you're looking at thousands of VPCs, thousands of CIDRs, thousands of routes, etc., you don't want to manage it at that level, right? I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But for those who don't want to manage it at that level, how do you kind of group these into intents, right? So how do you say that my finance domain will never talk to my engineering domain, for example, or it will, but these are some exceptions. So how do you drive that intent through your network fabric, right? And how do you make it globally available across your real estate? Not only for things which are inside AWS, but also for your infrastructure, which is in your data centers as well, or your branch offices, right? So that kind of flows all the way through that. And it really makes it easy in terms of that unified approach, so you can apply the same policy across a variety of your connectivity across your cloud. And it really makes that easier through that unified approach as well.
Yeah.
So do you have a lot of customers that... oh, sorry. You were going to say something, Chris?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So do you... This is just fascinating to me. So do you have customers that are using CloudWAN more in an east-west type of capacity than just to access workloads? Like, is there anybody that's trying to basically use AWS as their service provider for whatever reason? I'm kind of curious about this because, I think about it today, and of course, you buy like a direct connect and you connect your data center to a region. And on the other side of the globe, you do the same thing. I've got another direct connect and I've connected it to AWS. And what you're saying basically with like CloudWAN is that, rather than have a really complicated MPLS, or whatever, some kind of private circuit or whatever that looks like, you basically you could use CloudWAN to stitch that together so that these two data centers could use AWS as like a backbone to connect to each other as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess to answer that, we have to start looking at the use cases which CloudWAN kind of targets to, right? So there are three main use cases. So the first one is what you alluded to, Tim, is essentially how do you connect VPCs, right? So you have a couple of data centers and you've connected up to the AWS and you're using the AWS backbone to have that kind of east-west connectivity. So there's definitely a use case where you're just connecting up your VPCs inside cloud. Right. So this allows you either a flat network or, to Alex's point earlier, you could segment this to your heart's content, right? So dev prod, engineering versus finance, whatever it might be, staging versus prod. It could be anything. So that's one use case. The second use case is where you're using it essentially to give you that branch connectivity, right? So you have your SD-WAN from your branches going up into CloudWAN, and then you have those connectivity across so your branches can communicate to each other. So you could leverage things like VPN, for example, where you don't want to put SD-WAN appliances in there, or if you want slightly higher bandwidth, you might be using Direct Connect, like you mentioned, and get that connectivity across. So that's essentially your second use case. And finally, we have other use cases where customers are looking for full hybrid connectivity, right? So they want your data centers, they have AWS. It could be for disaster recovery, for example, where they have connected to one AWS region, but they want to expand to other global connectivity options across different regions, and also overlaying segmentation on top of that. So, yeah, short answer, correct. We do offer that. And think of it from a perspective of 3 different use cases, which are ones fit into these. And given that it was released last year, we are continuously working with our customers as well to, look at other use cases and what else can they come up with to do cool stuff with networking, which always amazes me.
Yeah, Lord knows they'll find the use cases, right? That's kind of how technology gets designed, right? So yeah, that's very cool. So given the kind of core fundamentals of CloudWAN and what it was brought to solve. So in my mind, I'm thinking, AWS does already have a product that has been a pretty tried and true networking product for the last several years, which is AWS Transit Gateway. So maybe can we dive into what CloudWAN differentiates from Transit Gateway? Because I'm sure there's many customers out there that are using Transit Gateway today. What benefits do they get by incorporating CloudWAN, or what are the differences between the two, I guess?
Yeah, 100%. So that's a good question, and we get that from our customers all the time, right? So I already have Transit Gateway. Do I need to move to CloudWAN? So the short answer is no, unless you need to kind of have that expanded global availability or global reach, right? So Transit Gateway, from a technical perspective, is still required. So it's got multicast support. It's got this fine-grained routing domain management, where you're actually managing your routes yourself. So it's all managed by by the customers themselves, which is a slightly different way for CloudWAN, where the routing and all of that is kind of managed under the hood by us, where you kind of interact with CloudWAN using segments and policies. So that's a difference there. But having said that, we always talk to our customers. We try and understand the use case, right? So if we can peer Transit Gateways into your existing CloudWAN as well. So if you so want to use Transit Gateway, you already have a workload in Transit Gateway, and you want to start using CloudWAN for some of your newer workloads, you can keep your Transit Gateway and you can create a peering connection into CloudWAN. So that's one possibility. And we also have customers who go down a migration path. So they're like, okay, we want to move away from Transit Gateway into more of a managed option, which is where CloudWAN comes into play. And there are migration paths for those customers as well. And we also have sort of like a third approach where customers make the explicit decision that we want more of a federation approach, where we kind of manage each of the Transit Gateway autonomous systems separately. And we kind of just peer into the core network. So we'll use the core network for the connectivity, but we'll still manage our Transit Gateways and the smaller networks on that side explicitly. So in that case, kind of you can think of CloudWAN as a provider edge. So I know Tim, you kind of alluded to that fact that CloudWAN just becomes a provider. So yes, and your Transit Gateway essentially becomes your customer edge or your spoke edge, if you can call it that. So yeah, there are quite a few places where you can use CloudWAN, continue to use Transit Gateway, that both work happily together, or there are migration options available as well.
It's like a Transit Gateway for Transit Gateways, right? It's like it's just a higher abstraction up, right? That allows you to do a lot more on top of it.
That's correct. Yeah.
Was that actually, was that a conscious thing? Like, what I mean by that is we're seeing so much the trend towards like application networking these days, right? And like, for example, and we'll talk about VPC Lattice in a totally different episode, but I mean, CloudWAN isn't VPC Lattice, right? They're completely different products. I think that's obvious. What I mean, though, is that we're talking about you're talking about an extra layer of abstraction, specifically like a move towards intent-based networking, away from traditional routing, traditional networking. We don't care as much. It's hidden under the hood. It's kind of managed. Is that intentionally to get away from the networking piece of it and make it more accessible to the development side, or is it more about like just the management and orchestration of large networks just kind of has to come with more abstraction, I guess?
Yes, I think with AWS, we always preach and practice that using the right tool for the job, right? So there is no real intent to move away from one towards the other, or going away from routing to fully managed or abstracted ways of doing things. It just depends on the personas and the scale at which you're operating. So obviously, Transit Gateway is tried and true. Customers love it. We love it. We have seen a lot of customers use them in a very cool way. And CloudWAN is, like you said, intent-based, right? So it creates that abstraction layer. So there are pathways and possibilities and use cases for where each of them are needed and used. And yes, I think you're right. There is a kind of move towards catering for more application-based networking out there in the real world these days, right? So like you mentioned, VPC Lattice, that is a prime example, right? So we are seeing, just like security and app development was back in the day, I think that slowly bridged the gap. I think networking and app development needs a little bit of a bridge as well. And what we're doing is we're helping create that bridge, right? So it might be VPC Lattice, or it might be intent-based routing, where a developer can go and have a chat with a networking person and say, look, this is a prod VPC. I want to talk to other prod VPCs in this XYZ workload. Can you please make it happen? Before, that conversation was painful, right? They will be like, oh, what routes do you need to open up? I don't know what routes. What are routes?
Right.
The conversation is really hard. But then again, yeah, it like I said, routing is always going to be there. It's not going to go away. But it just helps those developers, be a little bit more open, have those communication channels across, create a single language, which is your intent, and start bringing them a little bit closer.
It's not like the networkers are necessarily being like phased out or anything when we're talking about a managed service versus, letting the developers, integrate that as well, because I would encourage anyone out there to go watch one of these kind of the routing loop that you guys do on the Twitch stream. Some of those technical deep dives on integrating CloudWAN with like hybrid networking with CloudWAN. You can deploy some very complex, very
hybrid especially.
Yeah, very complex architectures that definitely need the professionals to come in and know, how to manipulate routing and, how to play with the BGP communities to get things to operate. So it's not like, the use of managed service pulls all the control out. It very much still is warranted.
I got to just pile on a little bit to this topic. So, because application networking is something I love talking about, but it's a really great point, especially with CloudWAN, because you tag the attachments, right, to apply the automation, like the intelligence behind it. So it's much more putting the intelligence into the tool than it is like you actually like automating it as you're doing the connection. And that's very service mesh like. So yeah, that's a great call out, Tim. That was a really good question.
Thanks.
Okay. So let's see. We've kind of talked about what CloudWAN is, what the major pain points it's been meant to solve. So I don't know how deep we can actually go into this, how much of the onion we can peel back, but can we kind of talk about what elements went into the actual development of CloudWAN, like what happened behind the scenes, and what all had to come together for that to make it a full-fledged product?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So obviously, we have very, very, very smart service teams in the background doing some very, very smart things, which I'll pretend I understand, but maybe I don't. But I'll do my best. So with AWS and Amazon, we always start with our customers first, right? So what they wanted was, just like I mentioned earlier, that unified view into it, right? So and they wanted to leverage our backbone. I think that's one of the key things, right? So we already have this connectivity across heaps of regions, like 25 growing regions. Every time there's a region coming up, we have one coming up in Auckland as well. And customers wanted to say, look, you have this region, you have this infrastructure, why can't we just use it, right? And we already are using a lot of this ourselves in AWS. So we connect our regions across through low latency, highly available networks. So we're like, how do we expose some of this functionality to our end users? So we provide them with this concept of like a global network, right? So they can create a container. So similar to like VPC, where they carve out a kind of like a software-defined boundary around their virtual private cloud. We provide them like a container, which is called a global network. And within that, we expect the users to create, or the customers to create, something called a core network, which is where AWS will start applying these things called policies, which we talked about, and that is how it came about. And the customer talks and manages this core network policy, right? And behind the hood, we have like a policy language which describes this in JSON, which describes what the intent is, and we essentially, when the customer makes changes, it's similar to how CloudFormation works as well, right? So you create a CloudFormation stack and you make changes to it. We have stack updates and they get applied. So with policies as well, we go through the same process. So when you make a change to the policy, how do we apply it? So we show what the changes to the policy are, and then we allow the customer to choose when to apply that, right? So it's not about is there a big policy and they just go and apply it to all the distributed routers, and will it work as expected? So we give the customers some view into what the changes will be, what gets modified, which segments, what's getting added, what's getting deleted before they actually go and apply it. So we are looking after like security from that perspective as well. So say, for example, you want to ensure that there is segregation of duties. So someone who's making changes to the policies is not someone who can deploy them as well. So we kind of catered for that as well in the background. And then it goes ahead and makes those changes across to these things called core network edges, which are essentially these edge constructs which are deployed into each region where you want to use CloudWAN in. And that's quite a distributed, think of it as I'm not sure if router is the best way, but essentially a construct which manages the BGP connectivity and the communication between all your network edges. So you could have 3 regions, and each region will have a core network edge.
Sorry, Ruskin, is it just a managed transit gateway under the hood? Is that really what a CNE is?
It's very similar to a transit gateway, but it is managed on top of it. It might be different. It might not be. I don't have privy into that information, and that'll be very cool to kind of dive into as well. But yeah, you can see it from a perspective of a managed transit gateway. And it goes and updates those routes, and away you go. And you have this intent-based policy, gets applied to your things. And then you go into your VPCs and you essentially say, I want to send my traffic to this core network edge, and it handles all the routing for you. So this is very simple from a user, from a customer perspective. You just kind of point to a endpoint, which is your core network edge. And that's it.
You mentioned how you can kind of see your policy before you apply it. Where is that actually shown? Is that just in the dashboard somewhere?
Correct. Yeah. So policies are version documents, right? So when you go and generate a policy, you can go and manipulate it using AWS console, or you can do it using JSON. You could use whatever CI/CD tools you wish to use, right? So you can even put pull request on top of that to manage that if you so wish to choose to do that. Yeah, and it's just in the console. So then it goes into certain phases. So it goes into like a execution, it goes into a ready phase, and you can execute it. And when you execute it, it actually tells you on what steps it's doing. And then it applies to the different edge locations, core network edges, rather. And you can see all this in the CloudWAN console if you go into that. So there are a few tabs on the right, and one, like if you do a demo down the line, I can definitely demonstrate that aspect to you, how it actually applies it.
For sure.
Okay.
And what
For
different
sure, we'll do
things
that.
you can configure, right?
Is it only in the dashboard, or can you have like the output somewhere, like a Terraform plan or something? Like, is there a way where you can see it, add it into a CI/CD pipeline to like see your changes or something? Is there anything like that?
Right. I actually don't know whether the change set can be seen from a CLI. I can have a look for you and get back to you in the demo, perhaps. But yes,
Okay.
I guess the question is, can I see the change set, and can I send it to a networking guru who can validate it?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's a good question. No, I think definitely seeing it, we'll definitely have you back so we can actually get a video portion of this and see some of this in action. I mean, I've poked around with CloudWAN just in my AWS account in my console, and it's, even for a network guy, it's daunting to, I guess, to start with. So I think one thing we kind of skipped over though a little bit is kind of like, what is the alternative, right? And so a lot of people that are listening may not have felt the pain of trying to orchestrate, 4 different types of connectivity and get everything connected, in AWS before. So maybe just a quick shout out for like, how did we solve this problem before? And like, therefore, what was the real pain that people were running into so that we could solve it with CloudWAN?
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of the pain arose from customers looking at extending themselves, right? So new branch comes up. How do you connect that into your data center? Do you need to connect to the data center? How do you connect it to your workloads coming into AWS, right? So you would have, do you need to go to the data center to connect to AWS? Your data center has a direct connect into AWS. You still need connectivity from your branch into the data center. So you would kind of maybe deploy a VPN, or if you want to deploy a software-defined network device onto your branch, connect that across to your data center through to AWS. That's okay as well. So that was essentially the path you would follow in the past, right? You would go into a branch, you would say, cool, what location you're in, right? What's your MPLS provider here? Is there a provider? Can we deploy a VPN? Do you have some IT staff here? How long will it take, right? Can we provision some hardware? So you start having these conversations continuously, right? And that's true for one branch. Imagine you're creating lots of different branches. Put the extra overhead of remote users as well, right? So you have VPNs, you have different applications needing connectivity as well. Your users are no longer in your branches now; they are remotely dispersed because of COVID, and they need to work from different geographies or different remote locations. How do you create this connectivity, right? Do you constantly need to go to a data center, or is there potential of your branch connecting directly to AWS? So that's essentially what we're trying to solve here, right? So if there are a lot of pain points there, like it would take a lot of time. You would need expertise in those areas as well. And when you connect into your AWS location, your workloads could be on the other side of the planet, right? So you're creating a branch in the US, but your workload might be somewhere else. You need that connectivity as well across regions and peerings and things like that. So how do we solve that? How do we make it a little bit easier? How do we monitor across these distributed networks as well, right? So which is really hard sometimes. And how do you put a single lens of security across this? So you're creating a new branch, you're getting into AWS, but hang on a second, you should not be able to see other branches, communication, etc. you should not be able to get to their workloads or their workloads in a different VPC or whatever it might be. So it gets complicated. And so CloudWAN, hopefully, it solves a lot of those challenges for you as a company.
Sounds like the big one is that, we get the ability to orchestrate connectivity together rather than saying, here's a site-to-site VPN going to this VPC, and I got to go build that, and I got to go manage the routing for that. And then, over here, I've got a direct connect, and I have to build that, and I have to manage that separately. And, over in another region, I've built a VPN between these two these two sites, and I've got to manage the VGW connections and all of the 10,000 different ways that we can connect things to AWS. Before CloudWAN pretty much had to be managed more or less one off, each one at let me land my VPN on a TGW, or whatever that is. Let me land the direct connect on a TGW. And it seems like, if I'm hearing correctly, what you're saying is that basically CloudWAN is a way to I hesitate to use the word, but my mind is failing me. The whole single pane of glass type of approach to managing and orchestrating all that connectivity. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. 100%. Like every time you bring a branch online or a data center online or even a user online, you have to consider, is it a new way of connecting, or are you using some established tried and true method? And a lot of times it might be a new way of doing things, right? For a variety of reasons, hardware changes or provider changes. So how do you manage all of these? How do you manage all of the plethora of different communication styles, visibility, observability, contracts even, right? And exactly right. So once you land into AWS, you can use your CloudWAN to get that unified, simplistic view of the networking world, and establish who connects to what in a much simpler way.
Yeah, all that centralized policy is that's so helpful and convenient.
Yeah.
Like Tim was saying, the sprawl that you have to do, just doing it all manually before that is a nightmare.
Yeah, and you could build some really cool patterns, and we could potentially do a demo of some simple patterns in the next episode, right? Where you can say we want to create some isolated networks where even things within a segment can't talk to each other, right? So I have a production segment, but even within that, you shouldn't be able to talk to each other. Or I have a segment which is PCI compliant, and I want to make sure that none of my PCI workloads can be accessed by anything outside of the segment. You can even do fine-grained sharing as well. So you could say, I don't want to advertise this route. I do want to share this, but not this part. So we're really excited as to what customers do with these policies, right? So they're all in JSON, and hopefully I can show you guys a demo. I won't make it too complicated, obviously, we can see what we can have some fun with the policy.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, actually, piggybacking off Tim's question, something that just came to mind. Talking about how we used to solve the problem. We can go back just not even that far to just AWS TGW. Like, we know TGW gives you this option for like a security service insertion, basically. So you can have an appliance VPC that lets you, manage inspecting your east-west traffic as it goes through TGW, which I know a lot of cloud customers are using. Hell, we even do the same thing at Aviatrix. We know that's a very critical service for people. So how is that addressed within CloudWAN? Like, let's say if a customer can customers today do security service insertion using any of the AWS products or a third-party service to do that east-west inspection with CloudWAN alone, or does that need to be done still through TGW?
No, so you could insert your security inspection appliances right through your CloudWAN as well, right? So you could you would have an inspection VPC, which could just be a extra attachment into your CloudWAN segment, and you could build policies around that. And I think you touched on an interesting point there as well. So how do we kind of partner with existing appliance providers as well? So we work very closely with people like your aviatrix, you mentioned that, and allow them to kind of hook into these, right? And a lot of blogs available out there as well, which leverage CloudWAN and show possibilities on how you can create firewall VPCs or inspection VPCs where you can plug in your network firewall or appliances which come from the provider to help you with that east-west navigation or inspection as well. So it just kind of plugs into your CloudWAN, and you can do your inspection through your policies and your routes and your intents.
Right. That's very good to know, because I know that's a kind of a concrete piece that a lot of people are using TGW for. So that's nice to know that was directly integrated there. So I know we're getting close to time on here, so we'll kind of hammer it home with one last point that we can cover here. So given like I said, we're closing in on 12 months that CloudWAN has been GA. How has it fared with customers? How are people using it? A lot of people saying, okay, we're off TGW, we're moving to CloudWAN, or, is it more of a hybrid approach? What's been the kind of the feeling you guys have gotten from customers so far?
Yeah, so it's a new product, like, so it's been GA since July. So we're seeing a lot of customers use them in a variety of ways, right? So customers who have their full networks built around Transit Gateway, they're looking at parts of how do we kind of augment the existing capabilities with CloudWAN, right? So yes, we can build new stuff. So I talked about 3 use cases before. So we want to build new stuff in CloudWAN if there is a need. We are expanding into multiple regions. We have Transit Gateway here. We are happy with that. How do we kind of bring CloudWAN into this journey? Right. So that there is that set of customers. We have customers who are still moving into AWS, right? So there are lots of stats out there where we are saying there are customers still on-prem and still doing that migration onto AWS. So how do we position CloudWAN for them, right? So if they have needs to kind of expand globally across multiple regions, multiple geographies, how do you envisage CloudWAN helping them? Right, because they are essentially a greenfield in AWS. So can CloudWAN help with that? And then we have other sets of customers where they've essentially made the decision to say, we are happy with our TG. We're not going to be migrating. Can we just use CloudWAN and federate it across, right? So use that kind of keep CloudWAN as the hub and create these TGV networks on the sides as they spoke. So that's essentially what we've seen in the field. We're still exploring that part as well. So how are customers using CloudWAN? So we continue to kind of explore that and see what cool use cases customers are coming up with. And as I find more, I'll definitely share them with you.
All right. That's great. Like I said, we're closing in on time here. But we don't want to leave anyone hanging. Like I said, we understand this is a visual medium and we're talking about a technical topic here. So, we think we would only do you right if we can bring in Ruskin back, and we'll do a visual component to this. So we will be having a AWS CloudWAN demo that we'll be putting on the YouTube channel as well. So if you can take a look at the show notes for this episode, we'll make sure to put all the details in there, and we'll maybe list out a set of things that we cover in the video demo, so you know what you're in for. But I would definitely encourage you to go take a look at that. Do not miss that. It's very valuable. Any closing thoughts? Any closing comments you guys have, Tim, Alex?
No, I'm really glad that you were able to come out, Ruskin, and explain CloudWAN, and that you could be here for our inaugural, if you will, DeMISTified. Are we going to get sued by Juniper, do you think? DeMISTified?
I really hope not. You can't. Mist, that's a general term. That's okay.
Anyway, no, really, thanks for coming out. This has been really, really informative. I'm gonna probably find an excuse to play with it myself, and I can't wait to see the demo and get that on our YouTube channel, because I think people will be really excited about it.
Yeah, 100%. so easy to get started as well. Go into your console, create a global network, start creating a core network. Even if you just join VPCs together, see how it works. Get your hands dirty. That's how I would always recommend it.
Yep. Yeah, it's just awesome. Thanks for coming on, Ruskin. This was great. It's another one of those topics you could go for hours and go super deep. But this was a great overview. And like Tim and Chris have both mentioned, I think getting that demo out in a YouTube video is going to be super helpful for anyone that needs to see it. This is something I feel like you will grasp much easier when you can actually see it and see how it works and kind of get an idea of what it solves.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool. So we definitely want to showcase the strengths there and show people how they can do it in their own environments as well. So yeah, we'll definitely have that coming up. So thanks again, Rustin, for coming on. We'll definitely have you back, like we said, for the demo shortly. So I'm sure we'll be talking soon. But to all the listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in for, like I said, another episode of the Cables to Clouds podcast. This has been the first installment of the Cloud Demystified series. There will be more to come. Definitely, like I said before, feel free to reach out to us, cablestoclouds@gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, anything at all. If you just want to say hi, if maybe you think
you tweet at us too.
Yeah. We do have Twitter. So Twitter, Cables to Clouds, A1 Discord, anywhere you want to hit us up. Feel free to do so. We would really like to hear from you. So with that, we will wrap it up and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks a lot, guys.
Oh, thanks all. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. It's Chris, and this has been the Cables to Clouds podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for our YouTube channel to be notified of all our new episodes. Follow us on socials at Cables to Clouds. You can also visit our website for all of the show notes at cablestoclouds.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.